The skies wept as the longships cut through the churning sea, their dragon-headed prows slicing the waves like Odin's spear through mortal flesh. Freya Haraldsson stood at the bow of her father's ship, her golden hair whipping wildly in the wind as she tightened her grip on her shield. Unlike the other shield-maidens who joined the raid for glory or to please the gods, Freya raided to feed the hollow emptiness that had consumed her since the massacre of her mother's family 5 winters past. "The Saxon dogs will feel our steel before the sun touches the horizon," growled Ulf, her father's most trusted warrior. His beard was matted with sea spray, his eyes gleaming with bloodlust. Freya merely nodded, her face impassive as the coastline of Northumbria emerged from the mist. She had learned long ago that vengeance brought only fleeting satisfaction. Still, she returned to these shores again and again, searching for something she could not name, driven by the belief that had become her shield against the world: no Saxon can ever be worthy of honor. Their blood must pay for my mother's kin until Ragnarok comes. "We strike the monastery first," her father Harald bellowed from behind her. "Then the village. Leave no warriors standing." The oars dipped in unison, propelling the fleet of 5 ships toward the shore where unsuspecting Saxons would soon feel Norse fury. As the youngest daughter of a respected jarl, Freya had fought to earn her place among the shield wall. Her skill with bow and axe was renowned, yet no amount of glory in battle filled the emptiness within her. What she never spoke of, not to her father, nor her 2 elder brothers who commanded their own ships, was her growing weariness of blood. In the quiet moments between raids, when the mead hall fell silent and even the Skald ceased their tales, Freya wondered if there could be more to life than the endless cycle of vengeance that had defined her existence since her 13th winter. But such thoughts were weakness. Her father had already arranged her marriage to Gunnar Ironhand, a powerful chieftain from the northern fjords whose alliance would strengthen their clan against rival jarls. The marriage would take place after the summer raids, when the ships returned laden with Saxon treasures and thralls. Freya had accepted this fate as all Norse women must, with stoic resignation and duty to her clan's prosperity. The ships ground against the pebbled shore, and warriors leapt into the shallow water with weapons raised. Freya followed, water-soaking her leather boots as she readied her bow. The monastery bell began to toll, a frantic warning that came too late for many. For Asgard, her father roared, and the war cry was taken up by 100 Norse throats as they charged up the beach. Freya notched an arrow and let it fly toward a Saxon guard who appeared on the monastery wall. He fell without a sound, and she felt nothing, neither satisfaction nor remorse. Just emptiness. The battle was swift and merciless. The monastery guards fought bravely but were overwhelmed by Norse fury. Freya fought alongside her kin, her axe rising and falling with practiced precision. When the fighting moved inside the stone walls, she found herself in a corridor lined with wooden doors. A crash from behind one door drew her attention. Axe raised, she kicked it open to find not cowering monks, but a young man shielding 3 small children with his body. He wore no armor, carried no weapon, yet he stood tall, blue eyes defiant despite the blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "Take me," he said in passable Norse, "but spare them. They are innocent." Freya hesitated, axe still raised. The man was clearly Saxon, his accent and clothing betrayed him, yet he spoke her tongue and showed courage few warriors could claim when facing death. "You speak the language of my people," she said, surprise momentarily overcoming her battle rage. "I study languages. I learn that which helps me understand others." His eyes never left hers, steady despite his obvious fear. "Even those who come with fire and steel." Before Freya could respond, heavy footsteps approached. The children whimpered, and without thinking, Freya stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "Hide," she commanded, pointing to a small alcove partly concealed by tapestry. "Quickly!" The Saxon hesitated only a moment before ushering the children into the hiding place. Freya turned to face the door just as it burst open, revealing her cousin Bjorn, his axe dripping with blood. "Any treasure?" he demanded, eyes scanning the room. "Nothing but empty scrolls and ink," Freya replied steadily. "I've searched it thoroughly." Bjorn grunted and withdrew. When his footsteps faded, Freya turned back to the alcove. The Saxon emerged, still shielding the children. "Why did you do that?" he asked. "I don't kill children," Freya answered stiffly. "Nor unarmed men who protect them. I am Maddox." "Maddox Kidman," he said. "And I owe you a life debt." "You owe me nothing, Saxon. When my people leave, take the children and flee inland." She turned to go, unsettled by the strange fluttering in her chest. Something about his steady gaze made her want to linger, to ask him how he had learned her tongue, why he didn't cower like other monks. But such thoughts were madness. She was promised to Gunnar Iron Hand, and this man was of the people who had slaughtered her mother's family. No matter how brave his stance or how eloquent his words, he was still Saxon. "Wait," he called softly as she reached the door. "What is your name?" She hesitated, then spoke without turning. "Freya Haraldsson." "May your gods protect you, Freya Haraldsson," he replied. "For you have shown mercy when you could have brought death." She left without responding, rejoining the raid with mechanical efficiency, but her thoughts remained with the blue-eyed Saxon who spoke her language and showed a warrior's courage without wielding a weapon. The raiders returned to their ships laden with treasures, golden crosses, silver chalices, and manuscripts bound in jeweled covers. They also brought captives, mostly young women and skilled craftsmen to serve as thralls. Freya's father was pleased with the bounty, but she found no joy in it. As they prepared to sail with the evening tide, a commotion erupted near the shoreline. Freya pushed through the crowd of warriors to see her brother Leif dragging a struggling captive, Maddox Kidman. "This one speaks our tongue," Leif announced proudly. "He will fetch a high price from King Halfdan, who collects learned thralls." Freya felt her heart constrict as Maddox's gaze met hers. There was no accusation in his eyes, only resignation. "He is no warrior," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Why waste space on our ships for a mere monk?" "He is more than a monk," Leif replied. "He knows runes and languages. Father agrees his worth exceeds that of 3 common thralls." And so Maddox Kidman was bound and placed in her father's ship, where Freya could not avoid his presence during the long journey back to their settlement in the Northern Isles. Though she tried to maintain her distance, she found herself drawn to his calm dignity even in captivity. 3 days into their voyage, a fierce storm struck the small fleet. Waves crashed over the gunwales, and men struggled to bail water from the ship's hull. During the chaos, Maddox's bonds came loose. Instead of attempting escape, which would mean certain death in the raging sea, he helped the Norse crew bail water and secure cargo. When a massive wave swept one of the younger warriors overboard, it was Maddox who threw him a rope and helped haul him back to safety. Harold, impressed by the Saxon's actions, ordered his bonds removed. "A man who saves Norse lives has earned the right to sail unbound," he declared, though guards were still assigned to watch the captive. That night, as the storm abated and stars appeared between ragged clouds, Freya found Maddox at the ship's stern, gazing at the horizon they had left behind. "You could have let him drown," she said, coming to stand beside him. "One less Norse raider in the world." Maddox turned to her, his face solemn in the starlight. "I don't measure the worth of a life by the language it speaks or the gods it worships." His words struck her like a physical blow. For 5 years, she had done exactly that, judged all Saxons guilty for the actions of a few. She had raided their shores, taken their treasures, and felt nothing for their losses because in her mind, they were less than human. "The children," she said suddenly. "Those you were protecting. Were they yours? He shook his head. Orphans. Their village was raided last season by men from the north. I've been teaching them to read and write. Shame crept through Freya's chest. Men from the north, her people, perhaps even her own clan, had orphaned those children. Why did you not try to escape when your bonds came loose? She asked. And go where? We're surrounded by water deeper than 10 men standing on each other's shoulders. He smiled slightly, the first she had seen from him. Besides, I gave my word when you spared me that I owed you a life debt. How could I honor that by fleeing at the first opportunity? Honor, she repeated. You speak of honor as if you were Norse. Honor belongs to no single people, Freya Haraldsson. It lives in the heart of any who choose to nurture it. She left him then, disturbed by how his words had shaken the foundations of her beliefs. The fleet reached their northern settlement as summer reached its peak. The captives were divided among the clan leaders, but Harold kept Maddox for his household, setting him to work transcribing old sagas that had previously been passed only through oral tradition. Freya found reasons to visit the small hut where Maddox worked, ostensibly to check on his progress or bring him meals. In truth, she sought his company and the conversations that challenged everything she had believed about Saxons, about honor, about the purpose of her raids. Your father tells me you are to be married before the first frost, Maddox said one afternoon as she brought him a plate of smoked fish and bread. Yes. To Gunnar Ironhand. She set down the plate with more force than necessary. The arrangement has stood for 2 winters now. You do not seem pleased by the prospect. Freya shrugged, attempting nonchalance. It is a good match. Gunnar controls the northern fjords and 50 warriors. His alliance strengthens our clan. And what of your heart? Does it strengthen that as well? She stared at him, unused to such direct questioning about matters of feeling. Norse women made practical marriages. Hearts were the concern of schools and their fanciful tales. My heart has no say in the matter, she replied stiffly. Maddox set down his quill. Among my people, there is a belief that God created Eve from Adam's rib, not from his head to rule over him, nor from his feet to be trampled upon, but from his side to be his equal, near his heart to be loved. Your Christian God has strange ideas, Freya said, but the concept lodged in her mind like a burr in wool. Equal. Near the heart. To be loved. As the days lengthened into midsummer, Freya found herself drawn more and more to Maddox's quiet strength and wisdom. He learned their ways quickly, joining in the daily work of the settlement without complaint. Her brothers grudgingly admitted his usefulness, particularly when he helped improve their fishing nets using techniques from his homeland. One evening, as the celebration of midsummer reached its peak around the great bonfire, Freya slipped away to the shore where Maddox stood watching the flames from a distance. Why do you not join the feast? She asked, coming to stand beside him. I am still an outsider here, he replied. And your betrothed arrived this morning. I thought it best to keep my distance. Freya felt her chest tighten. She had avoided Gunnar since his arrival, making excuses about helping prepare the feast. The truth was that each day spent in Maddox's company made the prospect of marrying Gunnar more unbearable. Tell me about your home, she said, not wanting to discuss Gunnar. It is green, Maddox said softly. Rolling hills that seem to go on forever. In spring, the meadows fill with flowers, blue, yellow, and purple. The monastery where I lived sits on a cliff overlooking the sea. At sunset, the whole building turns golden, as if touched by divine light. He spoke with such longing that Freya could almost see this place, so different from the rocky shores and pine forests of her homeland. Do you hate us? She asked suddenly. For taking you from there. Maddox was quiet for a long moment. I did at first, he admitted. But hate is a heavy burden to carry across an ocean. I set it down somewhere between your shores and mine. I carried my hate for 5 years, Freya said, surprised at her own candor. My mother's family was killed by Saxon lords when I was 13. I've raided your shores every summer since I was old enough to lift an axe, telling myself each Saxon life taken balanced the scales of vengeance. Did it? He asked gently. Did the killing ease your pain? She shook her head, tears threatening for the first time in years. Nothing has eased it. Not until what? Until I found you protecting those children, she whispered. Until I saw that Saxons could be brave and honorable and kind. The revelation struck her with the force of Thor's hammer. Her belief that no Saxon could be worthy of honor, the shield she had used to justify her raids, her coldness, her acceptance of a loveless marriage, had been shattered by this one man who embodied everything she respected. Before either could speak again, a harsh voice called from behind them. So this is where my bride hides herself. Gunnar Ironhand strode toward them, his massive frame silhouetted against the distant bonfire. With a Saxon thrall. Gunnar's hand fell heavily on Maddox's shoulder, fingers digging in with deliberate force. Has this dog been bothering you, Freya? Speak the word and I'll have him flogged. He has done nothing wrong, Freya said quickly. He is my father's scribe. I was merely checking on his work. Gunnar's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but he released Maddox with a shove. Come back to the feast. Your father wishes to announce our handfasting date. Freya had no choice but to follow, casting one apologetic glance back at Maddox. His face remained impassive, but his eyes held a sadness that mirrored the ache in her own heart. The next several days were filled with preparations for the handfasting ceremony. Gunnar made it clear that once they were married, he would return to his own settlement with Freya at his side. She would leave behind not only her family but any chance of seeing Maddox again. The thought was unbearable, yet she saw no escape from her fate. Her duty to her clan, the alliance her marriage would secure, these were not matters a Norse woman could defy without bringing shame upon her family. 3 days before the handfasting, disaster struck. A rival clan led by Jarl Ivar the Grim launched a surprise attack on the settlement. Though outnumbered, Harald's warriors fought bravely, pushing the attackers back to the shore. During the battle, Freya fought alongside her brothers and Gunnar, her axe finding its mark with deadly precision. In the chaos, she became separated from the main force. 3 of Ivar's men cornered her against the cliffside, their swords gleaming with blood already spilled. Jarl Ivar sends his regards to Harald's daughter, one sneered, lunging forward. Freya parried the blow with her shield, but the force drove her to one knee. As the second warrior raised his axe for a killing stroke, a figure burst from the underbrush, Maddox, wielding a fishing spear. He drove it through the axeman's chest before the blow could fall. The remaining 2 warriors turned on him, but Maddox fought with unexpected skill, dodging one blow while parrying another. Freya regained her feet and dispatched one attacker with her axe. Maddox managed to disarm the third, driving him back until he lost his footing on the cliff edge and plummeted to the rocks below. Where did you learn to fight like that? Freya gasped, bleeding from a cut on her arm but otherwise unharmed. I wasn't always a monk, Maddox replied grimly, his own breath coming in ragged gasps. Before I took vows, I was a soldier in King Ethel's guard. Before she could respond, more shouts approached, Gunnar and several warriors, weapons drawn. They had witnessed the final moments of the fight from a distance. The Saxon thrall bears arms against Norse warriors. Gunnar bellowed, advancing with sword raised. No. Freya stepped between them. He saved my life. These were Ivar's men, not ours. Gunnar hesitated, his face contorted with suspicion. A Saxon defending a Norse shield-maiden? Why would he do such a thing unless he hoped for reward? Because honor belongs to no single people, Freya said, echoing Maddox's words. It lives in the heart of any who choose to nurture it. Her father arrived with more warriors, surveying the scene with shrewd eyes. When Freya explained what had happened, Harald stroked his grey-streaked beard thoughtfully. The Saxon has repaid his life debt by saving my daughter, he declared. By our laws, this earns him his freedom. Gunnar protested loudly, but Harald silenced him with a stern look. This is my settlement, Gunnar Iron Hand, and I still rule here. The Saxon goes free. Relief flooded Freya's heart, but it was short-lived. Freedom meant Maddox would return to his homeland, away from her forever. Yet how could she wish him to remain a thrall, bound to a life not his own? That night, as the settlement celebrated their victory over Eva's raiders, the skald sang of the Saxon thrall who had fought like a berserker to save Jarl Harald's daughter. Maddox sat at Harald's table, no longer as a thrall but as an honored guest. Freya watched him from across the mead hall, her heart torn between joy at his freedom and despair at his inevitable departure. Later, she found him outside the hall, gazing at the stars. My father says you may take one of the small fishing boats when you leave, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Leave? Maddox looked surprised. I had not thought that far ahead. But surely you wish to return to your home? To your green hills and golden monastery? He turned to her fully then, his eyes reflecting the starlight. What I wish, Freya Haraldsson, is something I dare not speak aloud. The intensity of his gaze sent warmth flooding through her. Why not? Because you are promised to another. Because I am a former thrall and you are a Jarl's daughter. Because there are 1,000 reasons why what I wish can never be. Tell me anyway, she whispered. I wish to stay where you are, he said simply. I wish for time to show you that love can grow between people whose worlds should never have touched. I wish, his words were cut short by approaching footsteps. Gunnar emerged from the shadows, his face a mask of fury. I see now why my bride is so cold to me, he snarled. She warms herself with Saxon fire instead. You misunderstand, Gunnar, Freya began, but he cut her off. I understand perfectly. You dishonor me, your father, and your clan by consorting with this foreign dog. He drew his sword. There is only one way to restore my honor. I challenge the Saxon to Holmgang at first light. Holmgang, the ritual duel that could end only in death or grievous injury. Freya felt her blood turn to ice. He is newly freed and has no weapons, no shield, she protested. This is not honorable combat but slaughter. He should have thought of that before he seduced a Norse woman promised to another. Gunnar spat on the ground at Maddox's feet. Sunrise. On the flat stone by the fjord. Unless you are as cowardly as most of your kind. When Gunnar had gone, Freya turned desperately to Maddox. You must take the boat tonight. Sail south before he can find you. And confirm every belief your people hold about Saxon cowardice. Maddox shook his head. I cannot. He will kill you. He has never lost a Holmgang. Then I will die with honor, having spoken truth to you at least once. He reached out hesitantly, brushing his fingers against her cheek. The truth that I have grown to love you, Freya Haraldsson, though all the gods of both our peoples would condemn me for it. His touch, so gentle compared to Gunnar's rough handling, broke something open inside her. The tears she had held back for 5 years, since her mother's family was slaughtered, finally spilled over. I cannot lose you, she whispered. Not now that I've found you. Some things are worth dying for, he replied softly. The chance to have known you is one of them. Dawn came too quickly. The entire settlement gathered at the flat stone by the fjord to witness the homegang between Gunnar Ironhand and the Saxon who had dared reach above his station. Harold provided Maddox with a sword and shield, but against Gunnar's superior strength and experience, few believed he stood a chance. Before the combat began, Freya approached her father where he sat as judge of the contest. "Father, I must speak with you," she said urgently. "There is something you should know before this duel proceeds." Harold nodded for her to continue. "I cannot marry Gunnar Ironhand," she declared, loud enough for all nearby to hear. "Not because of the Saxon, but because my heart cannot pledge what it does not feel." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Harold frowned deeply. "This is not the time for such talk, daughter. The alliance with Gunnar's people is vital to our clan's security. Then find another way to secure it. Trade agreements. Foster exchanges. But not through my marriage." She drew herself up to her full height. "I am a shield-maiden who has fought beside you in a dozen raids. I have brought honor to our family name. I ask now that you honor my heart in return." "And what of your heart?" Harold asked, his voice softening slightly. "What does it tell you?" Freya glanced at Maddox, who stood ready for combat, his face solemn but determined. "That I have been wrong about many things. That vengeance cannot heal wounds, only love can. That honor is not determined by birth or language but by actions." Harold was silent for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he stood. "Gunnar Ironhand," he called. "A matter has arisen that must be settled before this homegang can proceed." Gunnar approached, irritation clear on his face. "What matter could be more pressing than restoring my honor?" "The matter of truth," Harold said. 5 winters passed. When my wife's family was slaughtered by Saxons, you brought us the news. You told us it was Lord Keedman's men who committed the massacre." Freya felt her heart stop. Keedman, Maddox's family name. "What of it?" Gunnar shrugged. "Saxon dogs, all the same." "Perhaps," Harold said slowly, "but last night, as I considered why a Saxon would risk his life for my daughter, I remembered something strange. The survivors of that attack reported their attackers spoke Norse among themselves. I dismissed it then as confusion born of terror." Maddox stepped forward. "Lord Keedman was my uncle. He died defending his people against northern raiders 10 winters ago. His son, my cousin, rules those lands now and has never ordered attacks on Norse settlements." Gunnar's face darkened. "You would take a Saxon's word over mine?" "I would seek truth," Harold replied. "And it seems strange that you knew so much about that attack, yet arrived too late to help defend my wife's kin." A terrible suspicion dawned on Freya. "It was you," she whispered, staring at Gunnar. "Your men attacked my mother's family and you blamed it on Saxons." "Preposterous!" Gunnar snarled, but his eye shifted nervously. "Why?" Harold demanded. "Why would you do such a thing?" "They refused my offer of protection," Gunnar said finally, his voice hard. "Thought themselves too good to pay tribute to me, though they lived at the edge of my territories. I taught them the price of such pride." "And blamed Saxons to hide your treachery," Harold said, his voice deadly calm. "Using our grief to manipulate an alliance through my daughter's hand." The crowd erupted in angry shouts. To attack allies and blame enemies was the height of dishonor among Norse clans. "Gunnar Ironhand," Harold proclaimed, rising to his feet. "You have broken the most sacred laws of our people. You have murdered allies and lied to create a blood feud. There will be no homegang today. Instead, I call for a thing to judge your crimes. The thing, the assembly of free men that served as both parliament and court, convened immediately. Evidence was presented, witnesses called. By midday, judgment was rendered. Gunnar Ironhand was declared Nithing, a man without honor, and banished from all Norse lands on pain of death. As Gunnar's ship disappeared over the horizon, Freya stood beside her father at the cliff's edge. The burden of false vengeance that had driven her for 5 years lifted from her shoulders, leaving her lighter than she had felt since childhood. "What becomes of the Saxon?" Harold asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "His name is Maddox," Freya said softly. "And if he wishes it, I would have him stay." Harold nodded slowly. "I have watched him these past moons. He works hard, learns our ways, and has shown courage worthy of any Norse warrior." He paused, studying his daughter's face. "You love him?" It was not a question, but Freya answered anyway. "I do. Though I never thought to love a Saxon. The Norns weave strange fates for us all," Harold mused. "Perhaps it is time for old hatreds to be set aside. Maddox Keedman has earned a place here if he wants it. And if he wants more than just a place in our settlement?" Freya asked hesitantly. "If he wants a place at your daughter's side?" Harold was quiet for a long moment. "The gods have sent us a sign by revealing Gunnar's treachery. Who am I to argue with the will of the All-Father?" He squeezed her shoulder gently. "Bring your Saxon to the Great Hall tonight. We will speak of what may be possible." That evening, beneath the glow of torches in Harold's Great Hall, Maddox formally requested Freya's hand in marriage. He offered not the traditional bride price of silver and land, but something far more valuable: peace between their peoples. "Through me, Lord Keedman's nephew, you have connection to Saxon lands that could bring trade instead of raids," he told Harold. "Your ships could carry goods rather than warriors, and both our peoples would prosper." The proposal was met with thoughtful silence from the clan elders. Change came slowly to Norse traditions, and marriage outside the culture was rare. Yet the prospect of peaceful trade routes was tempting, especially as Norse settlements expanded southward. After much deliberation, Harold gave his consent, with one condition: you must be accepted by our gods as well as our people. If you truly wish to join our clan through my daughter, you must undergo the rituals that make a man Norse in the eyes of the All-Father. Maddox agreed without hesitation. In the weeks that followed, he learned the sacred rites, memorized the ancient sagas, and prepared himself for formal acceptance into Harold's clan. Though he did not renounce his Christian faith, he honored the Norse traditions with sincere respect. At the autumn equinox, beneath the aurora borealis that danced across the northern sky, Maddox Keedman and Freya Haraldsson were joined in marriage. Their hand-fasting combined elements of both their cultures: Norse rings exchanged alongside Christian vows, mead shared from a ceremonial cup, while Saxon prayers were whispered over their joined hands. As the celebration continued into the night, Freya and Maddox slipped away to the shoreline where they had first truly spoken. "Are you certain of this path?" Freya asked, watching the green light shimmer above the dark water. "You have given up much to stay in a land not your own." Maddox drew her close, his arms strong around her. "I have gained far more than I've lost. And this is my land now, as you are my people." "The gods had strange plans for us," she mused, resting her head against his chest. "To think that 5 years of hatred could be transformed into love. Perhaps that is the greatest victory," Maddox said softly. "Not conquering lands or winning wealth, but conquering the hatred in our own hearts." Freya smiled up at him, her warrior and her peace, her enemy turned beloved. "Then we have won the greatest battle of all." Above them, the aurora swirled like the threads of fate being rewoven, creating a new pattern where love bridged ancient divides and changed the course of 2 lives, and perhaps 2 peoples, forever.